All right, let's have a discussion about the legacy of firearms. Well, hello and welcome back. Brian here again, and today we're going to be taking a look at yet another aspect with our historical firearms. We've talked a lot about the varying operating systems and the science and technologies involved. Today we want to take a look at the legacy, the lasting impact that these weapons have had, and specifically we're going to look at them today in the context of a weapon of war. Obviously they've got all manner of applications as sporting weapons and hunting weapons and that sort of thing, but today specifically we're looking at military application, in which they have had a profound impact on our history and our societal development. For starters, it's important to bear in mind that throughout pretty much all of human history, there has been a need for an emphasis on martial training from a very young age. Whether you're looking at warrior societies where just about everybody is involved in some respect, or you're looking at societies in which they've got a specific warrior class where it's just a portion of that society, somebody is learning how to fight from like kindergarten age on up. So to use the Jamestown specific example, for instance, we see repeated descriptions of Powhatan children, and especially the boys, training with their archery from the age of 5 or 6. At that same time in Europe, we see the gentry and the nobility, Europe's warrior classes, training with a sword as early as the age of 6 or 7. We see in England, specifically during the heyday of the English longbow, they got an entire social class devoted just to the bow, and every son of a yeoman was to have a bow in his hand by the time he was 7. So there's this need for each of these weapon systems to start building skill and expertise from a very early age, and oftentimes to start building physical conditioning, strength. And again, we look specifically at archery, and again, take the example of the English longbow. I mean, we see a weapon that requires such physicality to operate it that centuries later, archaeologists unearthing skeletal remains can tell when they've found an archer, because the bow has had such a lasting impact on even the skeletal development of that archer. And the weapons kind of require it. And so that's one of the big things that starts to shift with the firearm, as we see basically getting away from that need for such in-depth training from such an early age. We see at the time, basically, they figured a few weeks of training was all that was necessary to make a man proficient with a musket. Now, just because you've been made proficient with a musket does not automatically mean that you're proficient as a soldier, but it's an important first step to make somebody proficient with that weapon. Yes, it does give some tactical advantages in terms of range and striking power against other ranged weapons and that sort of thing, and those are important in their own right. But the fact that you do not have to raise a musketeer from childhood is a major game changer. And when we look at other weapons throughout history that didn't require a ton of training, the stuff that the rabble would be armed with, they don't tend to be particularly effective on the battlefield. So now that you've got a weapon that is devastatingly effective on the battlefield and does not require lifelong training and conditioning, that really starts to have a major impact. We see, in particular, with Sir Roger Williams, he talks about, he's a prominent military author just prior to Jamestown's settling, and was an experienced combat commander. He talks about sort of the disadvantages to archery by the end of the 1500s. Now, he's not remarking on the history of archery, and he's the first to say that it was very important for a long time, but by what he considers a modern era, by the 1590s, he's saying Touching bowmen, I persuade myself 500 musketeers are more serviceable than 1,500 bowmen. From that rate to the greater numbers in all manner of services. My reasons are thus: among 5,000 bowmen, you shall not find 1,000 good archers. I mean to shoot strong shots. Let them be in the field 3 or 4 months, hardly find of 5,000, scarce 500 able to make any strong shots. In defending or assailing any trenches, lightly they must discover themselves to make fair shots, where the others shot spoil them. By reason they discover nothing of themselves unless it be through a little through small holes. Basically, he's saying a couple of things there. He's saying, again, the difficulty of training an archer. You've got as many as 5,000, maybe 1,000 of them are good at it, and they're strong enough to shoot a powerful bow and shoot it with enough force for it to be truly effective in a combat setting. And then he goes on to say, basically, once you've been on campaign in the field, those archers have to be in really good shape. Well, soldiers on campaign, they're camping out, right? They're sleeping in poor conditions. They're often being fed poor quality provisions. They're dealing with rampant camp disease, as you've got a large concentration of people all packed in together without good infrastructure. And so, yeah, you're making the point, once they're all hungry and half of them are sick with dysentery, like, they're not shooting that bow well anymore. And then he touches on the lack of flexibility with the weapon and using it in very specific circumstances. His primary experience, a lot of it is based in siege warfare. And so you're dealing with entrenched forces. You're dealing with people that are trying to shoot from cover. And it's important to note as well, I think oftentimes we get this idea that there's only one way of fighting historically, and we think of the big open pitched battles on open battlefields. Already these guys are worried about, can I shoot it from a trench? Can I shoot it from a fortification? Can I shoot it from cover without exposing myself? And he's making the point that unless you've got stuff specifically built, like medieval castles with the loops, the firing slits, that archer has to expose so much of themselves to be able to use that bow effectively. Whereas by comparison, a musketeer need only expose this much of themselves to do it. So, and in another passage, he basically makes the point that a man could be half dead with dysentery, essentially, and as long as he can still get up on his feet, he can fight with a musket. So he doesn't have to be super well conditioned ahead of time, and he doesn't have, while ideally, yes, you should still make efforts to keep your soldiers in as good a shape as possible in the battlefield. The reality is that often it's not going to be possible. And, with a musketeer, even when they've been weakened by the realities of battlefield living and campaigning, they can still operate the weapon. Another passage we have selected here is to prove musketeers the best small shot that ever were invented. Bold statements, right? He says, the difference betwixt the muskets and any other pieces that are used, if it be in a battle, howsoever the ground or place falls, out in trenches, either assailing or defending towns, forts, or fortresses, or in defending or assailing straits or passages, whether it be by night or day, in my judgment, 500 muskets are better than 1,000 calivers, which would be the light musket, essentially, or any other such shot, and are to be valued from that rate unto the greatest numbers. My reasons are thus: the musket spoils horse or man 30 score off. Now, we're not 100% certain here, but 30 score off. The only measurement that makes any sense is if he's talking in feet, and that would put it off at about 200 yards. And while a shot at 200 yards is beyond the accurate range of the musket, at 200 yards, it should absolutely still be hitting hard enough to, as he says, spoil a horse or a man, to cause a debilitating injury, to take either the man or the horse out of combat. And so he's talking about, again, the lethal effective range of the projectile. And he qualifies that. He says, if the powder be anything good, and the bearer of any judgment. So while it is much easier to make a person proficient with a firearm than with most any of your traditional weapons, the bow, the sword, and whatever, he is also making the point that you do still have to have somebody that is halfway decent with it. And, you got to have good munitions and that sort of thing. So he's putting some qualifiers in there. And he says, if armed men give the charge, and in this case, armed would mean armored. He says, if armed men give the charge, few or any carry arms of the proof of the musket, being delivered within 10 or 12 score. So again, if our initial assumption as to what he's referring to in terms of range is correct, we're looking at about 40 yards. He's saying even the best armor in this time period is not going to hold up against musket fire at, that 40 to 50 yard range. Which, again, would be consistent with period practice. You've got a handful of guys at the very top of the heap, nobility, who can afford the absolute best of the best armor, who might be able to wear something that the breastplate alone might hold up to musket fire. But again, now you're looking at something that requires a tremendous amount of training and conditioning to operate in. So much additional weight being added to make it musket proof. So not something you're going to run into with the average soldier. So he's saying, it doesn't matter how good the armor is, the musket will go through it at closer ranges. And at greater ranges, it'll knock down a horse or a man, like, no problem. So, he's making that point of, again, the effectiveness of the weapon hinging on the fact that you can take a much wider slice of your populace and pretty easily make them into musketeers than you would be able to turn them into pretty much any other type of skilled fighting force. And this is going to start to have, as this sinks in, as everyone else in Europe and Europe's colonies in particular really start to think the same way, and clearly they do, because, by the end of the 1600s, firearms are the dominant force of the battlefield. Pikes are still out there, but now it's the roles have switched. Instead of musketeers supporting pikemen, pikemen are now supporting musketeers. And once an effective bayonet is invented, we get into the 18th century. Musketeers are pretty much your entire line infantry. Cavalry are using firearms as much as they're using their sabers. The lance has gone by the wayside. It's clear that everybody else ends up thinking the same way. Not only do you not have to train a soldier from childhood to be proficient with a firearm, but because you now no longer have to train a soldier from childhood anymore, you don't have a need for that warrior class anymore. And that starts to have some pretty major societal impact. And when we think about the traditional social structure in Europe, with the nobility and the gentry, those warrior classes, these folks who are, they've got land that generates them revenue. The revenue buys them weapons and armor. It also allows them to employ people to do, the labor for them, the drudgery for them, so that they can spend their time practicing with the arms and armor. But this ends up meaning that one small portion of your society has all the land and all the money and all the arms and armor, and they're the ones who know how to use the arms and armor, and so they end up with all the political power as well, by design. And now, with that need for warrior class sort of taken away, that need to have the wealth and the land and the political power concentrated on that one social class starts to go away as well. And so we see, for instance, with the development of the United States in particular, while we absolutely have economic classes, we don't have social classes. We don't have that hierarchy, that social ladder. We don't have gentry and nobility. We don't have a warrior class. Anybody can own land. Anybody can own firearms. Anybody can be can join the military at pretty much any time and become a proficient soldier. You don't need all of that. Again, all of that ancestral training, if you will. And so it really starts to have, like I said, a dramatic impact on our societal structure. Sharing things around, like say in your government, the right to vote, obviously that takes a whole lot longer to get fairly distributed amongst the populace, and there's a lot more things that have to change. But that's an important first step, is negating that need for a warrior class. It's something that we see here at the museum on a regular basis with our demonstrations. It is not terribly taxing for us to train just about any of our staff here in the fort to demonstrate with a musket safely. It is a whole lot more involved for our colleagues at the Paspahegh site to achieve competency with the archery. Even today, even without a bow as powerful as what you would have seen in use historically. As we see, again, listed historically, a few weeks being considered necessary to get a man proficient with a firearm, while modern infantry training may go on for months, a few weeks are spent familiarizing soldiers with their firearms. That much hasn't changed. Pretty major impact, aside from just a new way to put holes in adversaries on a battlefield. The societal change that technology makes possible is pretty substantial. The firearm ends the need for a warrior class and allows for the structure of our society to begin to evolve. Big stuff. Now, we made some comparisons between the firearm and the archery today. If you guys would like to see more of a focused breakdown of the opinions from the time period, from the 16th and 17th centuries, of firearms versus archery, let us know in the comments, because we could do a video on that as well. Thank you for joining us today. If there's anything else you're wondering about, let us know, again, below in the comments. We'll catch you next time.